never seen anything like... Oh, yes, I have.
Don't ask me why. Don't ask me for who. Just sit back and enjoy me venturing into a category I tend to avoid. 2 things to keep in mind. I'll be pairing characters off and judging who's likely to win, and I won't bother using the adult version of Team 10. Partially because of this.
It's you. If he's not here, the only one who can protect the village is me.
But mainly because I don't really have enough on all their capabilities as adults to make anywhere close to a fair assessment. On that same note, I'll be discussing Team Taka during the Kage Summit, since really that's the last point they resembled anything close to a proper team. Keeping with...
You're using careful calculations, right?
I could. But will I?
Keeping with the spirit of the characters. I'm starting with the 2 who would be most likely to want to get this over with. While both Suigetsu and Shikamaru are capable hand-to-hand fighters, they don't really stand out in the series or in their group when it comes to that field of combat. Suigetsu does compensate for this by taking his year's training to be a swordsman, and utilizing a blade capable of repairing damage simply taking the iron from people's blood. Granted, his senior did scoff at the technique he showed, but given the fact that said senior was part of a group called the 7 Swordsmen of the Hidden Mist, I would imagine his standard for impressive swordplay is quite high. Moving on to intellect, Suigetsu is fine. He does know how to push the buttons of a teenage girl, and is never really shown to be lost when his teammates are analyzing their opponents, but again no plan or input from him is anything close to noteworthy. For Shikamaru, he's pretty much impressed everyone he's fought against, as well as his teammates when it comes to quickly assessing any situation he's in, and coming up with the best solution at the time. For their main ability, Suigetsu is an aquatic shapeshifter who can negate the damage of most attacks he experiences. This also allows him to take control of large bodies of water and uses them to grow in size and strength. Still, there's only so much damage he can take, and there are some attacks that act as a counter to his abilities. Shikamaru uses his Chakra to control his shadow in a variety of ways, but primarily connecting it with other people and using that to control their movements. Said control is dictated by the difference in strength between him and his target, so if he begins to tire or if they're just too strong, the control wavers. Both did fight exceptional ninjas from the most dangerous criminal group at the time, but it's made pretty clear early on that Suigetsu is just being humored. Shikamaru does manage to defeat his Akatsuki opponent, after the second attempt and hours of pre-planning. It shouldn't be too controversial to say Suigetsu has Shikamaru beat in terms of raw power, yet Shikamaru is normally facing off against people that have him outclassed in that area, so overcoming that difference shouldn't be too much of an issue for him. The real question is, would Suigetsu be able to use surrounding water to increase his strength to break free of shadow possession, and what would Shikamaru be able to do if he did catch him? First off, that depends on where the battle takes place, but ignoring that, Suigetsu isn't likely to go with that option until he's desperate, since he prefers more directly intimate attacks. For the second answer, it's very likely Shikamaru would be able to catch him in his technique, since he's done so to more experienced and observant opponents. The issue is that he can't use shadow possession to make Suigetsu tell him anything about his weakness, and he doesn't have anything in his normal arsenal that would do any damage. I don't see it as an impossibility for him to acquire something that could stop Suigetsu in his tracks, but only if he knew ahead of time and who he was fighting, which isn't one of the stipulations I'm giving. So in this round, I'd say a battle between the two would be a 7 out of 10, in the favor of Suigetsu.
It's been ages since I've had anything this good.
Next there's the Silver Medal Ladies of Love. While Shikamaru and Suigetsu didn't have many fights on their own showing their skill, or more so winning, with Karin and Ino they just don't have many fights period. So I know far less about their physical capabilities outside of Karin can beat deranged prisoners, and Ino was equal to a child version of Sakura. For major abilities, there's a nose healing and mind transfer abilities, allowing her to force her consciousness into her target, and Karin can track people's energy and also heal. A nose ability does have the drawback of taking a few seconds for her mind to return to her body if she misses, and even pointing out the measures she's taken to account for that in the past. They're likely not going to work on a character who's regarded as having exceptional skills of perception, both in terms of her sensory abilities and basic deductive reasoning. This really comes down to a less significant version of a canon fight, wherein the winners would be decided by who strikes first. So it's a 5 out of 10 split for both girls.
Oh, what a huge pain. Yeah, more or less.
Moving on to the teammates with the biggest hearts, and the strength to carry them. Choji's greatest solo accomplishment is casually stopping a punch from someone capable of lifting him with one hand when he was large enough to cover dozens of trees. Now certain intellectuals may bring up the notion that proper context reveals that said opponent fought Choji after finishing a fight with 2 elite ninja, and that Choji could only win after forcing his body past its limits with specially created pills. My counter would be that I'm using an older Choji that not only is able to access this form without the need of his traffic light pills, but was also able to briefly hold back a otherworldly statue with help from his dad. Jugo destroyed nearly half of a mountaintop with a single punch. A feat of strength that's still impressive, but not exactly on the same level as what Choji's shown. Speed-wise Choji isn't exactly a slouch, but isn't setting any records either. Jugo does have organic boosters that he mostly uses to increase his strength, but should still help give him an advantage in this category. Jugo also can partially turn his body into close or mid-range weapons, so that is another edge over Choji. What really decides this is that Jugo is by desire a pacifist who doesn't want to use any more force than he needs to, but sometimes can't help himself. Choji's a gentle soul himself, but that's mainly reserved for his friends. So it comes down to if Choji is willing to cut loose before Jugo cuts up. If so, then it's a 6 out of 10 in Choji's favor, if not then reverse the situation.
I killed him! I just killed the big guy!
Did you just call me Fatso?
Time to draw things to a close by discussing the leaders that bind them together. Once again their toughest opponent that they faced are Akatsuki members, and once again context shows them not being too concerned. I will give Sasuke the acknowledgement that his fight did last longer and he did more to push his opponent. Strength is pretty much up in the air for these two since their main way of attacking relies more on either speed or destructive force. Speaking of which, Sasuke was able to momentarily keep up with a ninja so fast the only people able to directly outpace him are teleporters, and someone relying on a literal unnatural amount of energy. Asuma did briefly keep up with someone who later fought the younger brother of the lighting fast ninja, but said brother isn't as fast. There's also the fact that Sasuke's eyes have the ability to see and perceive anything Asuma tries before it even makes contact with him. As for destructive force, Asuma can turn people to ash if they're caught in his attack. Sasuke can light people on fire with a single look, and with a flame that can burn through stone. He also has a defense that can take anything Asuma tries on him while leaving Sasuke untouched, but not exactly unharmed given the side effects of using said defense. Asuma did learn of a way to bypass one of Sasuke's abilities, but that was 3 years ago with no signs of him honing that method since then. Yeah, Asuma isn't really looking like he has much of a chance. What he could exploit is the fact that Sasuke wasn't in the best state of mind during the point in time that I'm using for this video. He wasn't completely incomprehensible or lacking in his own strategies that still garnered surprise and respect, he just was not as composed and careful as he normally is. Asuma on the other hand did experience war firsthand and was part of an elite guard unit of ninja, so he likely has experience with maintaining a level head even when he's uneasy, and has shown his respectable pragmatic side. It's not quite a mental fortress since he has shown clear terror when faced with an unusual enemy, Buin. It's not much of a stretch to say he's more emotionally stable than Sasuke. With this in mind there is a possibility he can gain an advantage by playing on Sasuke's instabilities with getting him to take unnecessary risks, or just overly rely on a power that's hurting him. That still isn't a guaranteed outcome, and even if it does happen Sasuke still has a skill set that would make anything less than a freak of nature have a difficult time putting him down. 8 out of 10 leaning towards Sasuke.
I couldn't care less about all of that.
For a small bonus I decided to cover each team's chances as a unit. This is the one section Team 10 has them nearly completely outclassed. Be it through their clan's history of being closely associated, them training under a teacher who builds on that foundation of teamwork, or just the simple compassion and care they'll show for each other even if it isn't life or death. Only one of those points could apply to Team Taka, and let's just say their partial mentor didn't really see teamwork as a vital element to his success, and to a much less extent theirs. Sasuke has shown the ability to convince them to put aside their differences to cover each other's weaknesses, and add to their strengths, but he's also quick to abandon that mentality if it means getting a chance to fulfill his goals, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem here. What will prove to be an issue is the fact that Team 10 at bare minimum has a broad understanding of a handful of Sasuke's abilities, meanwhile he's never seen theirs in action and possibly doesn't even know what they are. With all this going for them, Team 10 does hit a snag since only one of them would possess any remarkable power, and they aren't aware of most of Team Taka's capabilities. While never fully together in these instances, it has been shown that they really aren't a match for enemies with greater abilities that are unknown to them, even if their opponents have abysmal synergy. The sole exception is again, when they had time to prepare and isolate their opponents. Keeping all of this in mind I'm going to say it's a 7 out of 10 in favor of Team Taka.
Who told you to butt in?
Are you kidding me? What's with the attitude, Sasuke? Not that I don't expect it, but we came to help.
Hopefully this video wasn't too much of a drag to sit through, and remember to not hesitate to share your thoughts for videos you want in the future.
Then maybe you can do another shipping video, only this time for